What if the most important argument about human nature did not happen in modern psychology, but over 2,000 years ago in a fractured land where kingdoms burned and alliances collapsed overnight? What if two philosophers, living in an age of war, answered a question that still haunts every courtroom, every school, every government, and every human relationship? Are people born good or born selfish? Because if we are born good, then cruelty is a failure of society. But if we are born selfish, then goodness itself is a fragile achievement. This is the story of Mencius and Xunzi, two minds separated by a century, united by one terrifying question, and divided by an answer that would shape empires. Stay with this story, because by the end, you may realize that every law, every punishment, every act of compassion, and even your instinctive judgment of others, quietly takes sides in their ancient debate. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The world that produced Mencius and Xunzi was not calm, not stable, and certainly not peaceful. They lived during the Warring States period, when China was not a unified empire, but a mosaic of rival kingdoms locked in constant conflict. Armies marched endlessly, cities changed hands. Political intrigue was not an exception, but a daily reality. The old Zhou order still existed in name, but its moral authority had shattered, leaving rulers desperate for guidance. Philosophers became strategists of survival. Their ideas were not abstract speculations. They were tools that could determine whether a state collapsed or endured. It was in this violent, unstable world that Mencius began to travel from court to court, speaking to rulers about something that must have sounded almost absurd in such an age: human goodness. He did not deny the brutality surrounding him. He had seen warfare, famine, corruption, and political betrayal. Yet he insisted that beneath all of this, something remarkable existed inside every human being, an innate moral sense waiting to be cultivated. To explain his vision, he offered an image so simple and so powerful that it has echoed across millennia. Imagine a child about to fall into a well. Anyone who witnessed this moment, he argued, would feel immediate alarm and compassion, not because of reputation or reward, but because empathy erupts spontaneously. For Mencius, this spontaneous reaction revealed a profound truth. Humans are born with moral sprouts, early tendencies toward compassion, shame, respect, and discernment between right and wrong. These are not fully developed virtues, but seeds, and like seeds, they require nurturing. If cultivated through proper education and benevolent governance, they grow into full moral character. If neglected, they wither. This meant something radical for politics. A ruler, according to Mencius, should not rely primarily on fear or punishment. True authority came from moral example. When leaders governed with benevolence, the people would naturally respond with loyalty and virtue. Power built on cruelty, however, was unstable because it fought against the grain of human nature itself. It was a hopeful philosophy in a hopeless time. And yet, precisely because the world seemed to contradict it, not everyone was convinced. About a century later, another thinker emerged who would challenge Mencius with a colder, more unsettling interpretation of human behavior. His name was Xunzi. He, too, lived amid war and political chaos. He, too, observed ambition, violence, and relentless competition among states. But where Mencius saw seeds of goodness struggling to grow, Xunzi saw something else entirely: unregulated desire. Humans, he argued, are not born virtuous. They are born with impulses that seek profit, pleasure, and advantage. Left unchecked, these impulses inevitably produce conflict. People compete for resources, envy one another, and pursue personal gain even at the expense of others. This was not, for Xunzi, a corruption of human nature. It was human nature. Goodness, therefore, was not natural. It was artificial, in the most sophisticated sense of the word. It was the product of deliberate cultural construction. Rituals, laws, education, and social hierarchies were inventions created by ancient sages precisely because raw human impulses were insufficient for social harmony. Where Mencius believed morality grew from within, Xunzi believed morality was imposed from without. This disagreement was not merely theoretical, it shaped their entire vision of civilization. If Mencius was right, then the role of society was to nurture inherent moral tendencies. Education would be like watering a garden. Punishment would be secondary, used only when cultivation failed. The ruler's virtue would be the most powerful force of social order. But if Xunzi was right, the picture changed dramatically. Society would need firm structures, clear rituals, and consistent enforcement of rules. Moral behavior would not emerge automatically. It would be engineered through discipline and training. Civilization itself would resemble a carefully constructed dam, holding back the chaotic floodwaters of human desire. Both visions responded to the same brutal historical reality, and both appeared to find confirmation in everyday life. Acts of spontaneous kindness seemed to support Mencius. Persistent conflict and selfish ambition seemed to confirm Xunzi. The tension between them remains unsettling precisely because neither perspective can be easily dismissed. Even modern research seems to oscillate between their conclusions. Studies of infants suggest early forms of empathy and fairness appear before extensive cultural conditioning, echoing Mencius's optimism. Yet behavioral experiments also reveal how quickly cooperation collapses under competition or scarcity, aligning with Xunzi's realism. It is as if both philosophers glimpsed different layers of the same human psyche. We might possess moral inclinations, but they are fragile, easily overshadowed by fear, hunger, or social pressure. We might also possess selfish impulses, but these can be moderated and reshaped by strong institutions and moral education. In this sense, Mencius described the potential inside us, while Xunzi described the structures required to sustain it. The historical impact of their disagreement was immense. Later dynasties and political thinkers debated which vision should guide governance. Confucian traditions often embraced Mencius, promoting benevolent rule and moral cultivation. Yet strands of legalist thought emphasizing strict laws and discipline resonated with Xunzi's sober assessment of human desires. Chinese political history would repeatedly swing between these poles. Trust in moral transformation versus reliance on institutional control. Too much faith in innate goodness could invite instability. Too much reliance on harsh regulation could breed resentment and rebellion. The most enduring systems often blended both, even when they did not explicitly acknowledge it. What makes this ancient debate so enduring is that it does not remain confined to imperial courts or philosophical texts. It surfaces in modern dilemmas with surprising clarity. When societies debate criminal justice, they are implicitly choosing between Mencius and Xunzi. Should offenders be rehabilitated because they possess an underlying capacity for goodness, or strictly punished to restrain dangerous impulses? When educators design schools, they face the same question. Should children's natural curiosity and empathy be trusted and cultivated, or must discipline and structured training mold their character? Even in everyday life, we unconsciously replay this argument. When someone harms us, do we attribute their behavior to corrupting circumstances, as Mencius might suggest, or to underlying selfish tendencies, as Xunzi would argue? Each interpretation leads to different responses: forgiveness or suspicion, reform or control, hope or caution. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that the debate persists because human nature itself contains both tendencies. We are capable of empathy and cruelty, generosity and greed, cooperation and competition. These traits coexist, emerging differently depending on context, upbringing, and social environment. In this light, Mencius and Xunzi appear less like opponents and more like complementary observers, describing different dimensions of the same complex reality. One focused on the moral potential that inspires hope, the other on the psychological realities that demand structure. Their intellectual duel, staged in an age of war, continues to unfold in every society that asks how humans should be governed, educated, and judged. And so the question returns, as urgent now as it was in the Warring States period: When you look at humanity, at its acts of compassion and its episodes of violence, which philosopher feels closer to the truth? If Mencius is right, then the path to a better world lies in nurturing the moral seeds already present within us. If Xunzi is right, then the path lies in building strong institutions capable of guiding and restraining our impulses. Or perhaps the deepest insight emerges when we refuse to choose entirely between them. Human beings may be born with moral tendencies, yet still require culture, discipline, and law to transform those tendencies into stable virtues. We may be neither angels corrupted by society, nor beasts restrained only by force, but something more fragile and more remarkable. Creatures whose nature contains both the possibility of goodness and the risk of chaos, constantly shaped by the environments we create. Two thinkers, separated by time but united by a single question, still whisper to us across the centuries. And every time we decide how to raise a child, how to design a law, or how to judge another person, we are, knowingly or not, answering them. Are we born good, or must goodness be built? The debate remains unresolved, and perhaps that is why it remains eternal.